Brandon stared at the bank balance, and every number on that screen felt like a goodbye note to the only life he'd ever known. In a single decision that left fans' jaws hanging, he and Julia sold the house, cashed in everything they'd built together, and walked away with $1.7 million. But will any amount of money ever heal the scars from a mother's ultimatum that shattered an entire family? You tell me, what would you do if your parent forced you to choose between blood and the person you love? Rewind just 6 months, and the internet was buzzing for a completely different reason. Julia had packed her bags in Russia ready to live out an American dream, only to find herself ankle-deep in muddy Virginia farm life. At first, it felt like an adventure, maybe even an extended honeymoon phase with the cameras always rolling. But each sunrise brought less fun and more pressure. The farm chores grew heavier, the rules kept stacking up, and privacy became a luxury she only dreamed of. Were the animals ever the real problem, or was it the constant surveillance and judgment that wore her down? Everyone remembers those early interview cuts where Julia's breathless excitement started slipping into wide-eyed anxiety every time Betty hovered near. TLC fans had tuned in expecting wild romance and wedding sparkle, maybe a little culture shock for reality TV spice. No one had their popcorn ready for what actually followed, a season that dropped any pretense of a love story and delivered a family brawl instead. People talked, memes were made, and suddenly, Julia's struggle was trending harder than any plot twists they saw coming. Watching Julia try to handle those days on the farm was almost comedic, if it wasn't so uncomfortable. Imagine a city girl who's never seen dawn unless it's from a nightclub exit, being told to rise at 4 for pig feedings. Everyone could see it, even Brandon, who kept promising things would get better. Yet every attempt he made at stepping up was met with different roadblocks. If he consoled Julia, his mom's voice crept in over his shoulder. If he sided with his parents, Julia's frustration boiled over. The standoff wasn't just about rules or chores. It was a slow-motion collision of old-school control and the desperate need for freedom. Things that were meant to be simple, where to sleep, what to wear, when to eat, spiraled into epic family debates. Can you call it a love triangle when the third person is your mom and she owns the house? Fans started picking teams, half rolling their eyes at Julia's city life struggles, half cringing at how tight the leash was on Brandon. Every little argument lit a fuse that everyone knew would explode. And yet, for a while, these moments still felt fixable. Maybe if they just got their own place, maybe if Brandon learned to say no, maybe if Julia played along a little longer, things would cool off. But as they say, how many maybes can one relationship survive before something has to break? Is it possible to win at love when the cost is burning down your family tree? The answer's coming, but the temperature is about to rise. Pressure has a funny way of revealing who people are behind the scenes, and the Gibbs household felt more like a reality show pressure cooker than a home. The boundaries blurred, the power plays got subtler, and what started as passive-aggressive digs from Betty soon turned into pointed comments that nobody could ignore. Julia couldn't even pick an outfit without a raised eyebrow or a pointed remark about American values. Any hope she had for blending in faded with every missed family dinner, every offhand joke about her accent, every "we do things differently here" talk where the subtext practically screamed outsider. It wasn't long before every conversation around the Gibbs kitchen table felt like an audition Julia couldn't win. On the surface, the fights would start small, maybe about chores left undone, or the way Julia handled money, or even how she decorated their corner of the living room. But underneath, everyone felt the tension. In those moments, Betty's voice got softer, almost sweet, but the meaning stung. She worried only because she cared. She wanted what's best for her son. Behind those words lurked a line that neither woman wanted to cross, but both knew was there. Julia might never be good enough, no matter how hard she tried. Watching Brandon freeze at the dinner table, stuck between two realities he couldn't reconcile, became almost painful. He wanted to protect Julia, but years of obeying his parents made every act of rebellion feel like betrayal. Brandon's entire childhood played out as a model son, obedient, careful, tiptoeing around conflict. Now he was getting squeezed from both sides, paralyzed by a loyalty test he never signed up for. He told himself he could make everyone happy, but every peace offering to Julia was one more snub to his parents, and every apology to Betty dug him into a deeper relationship hole. Julia, on her side, felt like the air in Virginia was getting thinner by the day. The isolation hit hardest when the cameras turned off. Friends were an ocean away. Even the simplest tasks, stepping outside to clear her head, calling her own family, suddenly mattered more, because it wasn't just homesickness anymore. It was a sense of being erased. Expectations stacked on top of her until it felt like she was losing her voice, and the more she spoke up, the harsher the response. Any resistance got labeled ungrateful. Every tear was proof she couldn't handle real life, and every complaint was spun into drama for the cameras. Instead of building a new family, it all started to feel like a competition. Who does Brandon love most? Every week brought a new test. Would he stand up for Julia this time? Or fold under the familiar weight of his mother's disappointment? Betty didn't just set rules. She drew up ultimatums in invisible ink. She wanted a promise her son never agreed to, and when he wavered, she'd remind him who held the keys, literally and emotionally. Tensions ticked higher every week, and fans noticed how performing for the camera sometimes made things even messier. Private arguments bled into public ones. Friends close to the couple whispered about what viewers never saw: the slammed doors, the long silences, the way every minor disagreement cracked open old wounds. No one could have predicted how quickly things would flip from snide remarks to outright war. Then, when Brandon left the house for work one ordinary afternoon, the energy completely changed. The feud that simmered behind closed doors came to a head. Betty took her opportunity, and the next time Brandon walked in, it wasn't the same home. He came back to a mother in full tears, saying she had been attacked, accusing Julia of physical assault while he was away. It dropped in the living room like an atomic secret. Nobody expected it, least of all the woman being accused. Suddenly, silence won out over shouting. Brandon froze in place, the whole family structure trembling, and the room chilled with possibility. Was this the moment everything would finally come undone? The echoes of that accusation didn't just stay in their living room. They exploded across the fan base, leaving everyone to wonder, how much more can they take before something unfixable happens? Seconds after Betty's accusation landed, time seemed to slow. There's an almost unreal moment after a family bomb gets dropped, where every person waits to see who will breathe first. Brandon could see how shattered Julia looked, eyes red, jaw clenched, unable to even argue her side because nobody in the room wanted to hear it. The trust between all of them evaporated, replaced by suspicion and panic. Julia tried to insist on her innocence, but at that point, nothing she said registered. In the story of this family, the accusation itself stung more than anything that might have happened. Brandon took slow steps back, mind racing through memories. Every sacrifice Julia made just to stand by him. The endless mornings in the cold, trying to fit in at family meals where she barely understood the conversation. Her smile in every, trying to be grateful, photo the producers encouraged. His parents didn't see the struggle. Brandon had. He remembered every tear that slipped when the farm felt more like a cage than a home. Every evening Julia whispered fears about never being accepted. Every callback to Russia that ended in a quiet, "I'll be okay." He knew what Julia had risked because he'd watched her lose pieces of herself for their marriage. So when Betty fired her next shot, her voice trembling but fierce, she made the threat official. If Brandon didn't end things with Julia immediately, she would cut him off from the family. Not just emotionally, but financially too. She called it love, but everyone in that room could see control shining brighter than any family bond. The force of years of childhood memories suddenly collided with his adult love, and for once, Brandon realized there would be no more middle ground. That favorite role he liked to play, the peacemaker, had been written out of the final act. People love to criticize reality stars for milking the drama, but what made this showdown so raw was how deeply real the stakes had become. Fans who watched Brandon waver for seasons saw him in this moment lost, searching for a way to say no to his mother, without shattering something inside. Every act of rebellion against Betty felt like breaking his own childhood. Each time, he had chosen marriage over comfort, love over routine. There was a price. The audience caught those glances, the way his face tightened with guilt when Julia struggled, the way he tried, over and over, to keep peace for just one more day. But all that effort led them right here, to an ultimatum nobody expected to be so public and so final. Julia, stuck in a nightmare that wasn't hers to begin with, could only watch the drama unfold. Publicly accused, outnumbered, she searched Brandon's face, desperate for a sign that he'd stand by her side, just once, without looking back to the people who'd raised him. Fans could almost feel the words she swallowed, the urge to run, the panic that comes from watching a partner hesitate when you need them most. Her isolation in that moment was total. That afternoon stretched for hours, each second packed with more unspoken thinking than the entire season put together. In Brandon's mind, clips played like highlights from a life he was about to lose. He remembered birthdays, Sunday brunches, games on the farm, all mingling now with scenes of whispered arguments, open-ended promises, and Julia's eyes daring him to finally choose her, without apology. Every flashback brought the decision into focus. Then it happened. Brandon's fear turned into resolve, and his voice, usually shaky when pressed by his mother, came out low, almost calm. Without a scene, he turned away from Betty and moved to stand with Julia, knowing that line he crossed could never be erased. He knew this time he wasn't faking grown-up bravery for television. By taking Julia's hand, he chose the storm over the stale safety of pretending. Overnight, life became a series of irreversible steps. The next stages happened fast, almost mechanical, evaluating every asset, meeting with realtors, scanning dusty childhood photo albums for what they'd bring and what they'd leave. The house sold. The farm, gone from their future. The cars, trinkets, anything that had meaning, even the stuff they used to fantasize about furnishing their own apartment, now felt heavy with old baggage. Everything got a price tag, and everything must go. The final numbers didn't feel real. 1.7 million was less a windfall, more an invoice for all the wounds, apologies, silences, and failed peace talks the couple endured. Julia kept a nervous smile through the house showings, but whenever Brandon turned his back, reality hit her in waves. She wasn't running to something. She was escaping what felt like an endless sinking feeling. This wasn't some Instagram influencer gap year in Europe. This was the only way to breathe again. Packing was both a ritual and a goodbye note. They spent the last night in an empty living room, walls echoing with memories both good and bad. They promised each other that the pain of leaving would buy a shot at happiness, real happiness, elsewhere. Cameras rolled for the last time, and viewers were left with an image that stuck like glue, the couple hauling suitcases into a waiting car, leaving Virginia behind for good. Social media lit up the second news broke of the move. Fans split right down the middle. Some cheered, saying, finally, they broke the cycle. Others called it reckless, accusing Julia of being a master manipulator or Brandon of being spineless. Hashtags trended, Instagram updates were dissected, and Reddit became a running commentary track arguing who was at fault and who was the real victim. With every like, comment, and share, Brandon and Julia's faces became bigger than the couple themselves, symbols of escape, tragic heroes, or selfish villains, depending on who you asked. Even reality stars from other franchises weighed in, debating whether this kind of break was brave or self-destructive. The conversation didn't stop for days. People speculated about what 1.7 million could do in Paris. Some said they'd be back for another spin-off or regret their decision. The first time life threw them a curveball in a new country. As they boarded that flight to Paris with 4 suitcases and a one-way ticket, the world seemed huge and small at the same time. Julia looked back only once in the airport, her version of closure. Brandon kept moving forward, shoulders tensed, as if waiting for one last voice to call his name and try to make him stay. But nobody did. Now more than ever, the stakes are tangled. They have money, yes, but peace of mind remains untested. They've lost the ground of their childhood, the daily ritual of farm life, the comfort of familiarity. In its place are travel, possibility, and the constant questions racing through their heads. Was freedom worth the cost? Would happiness come once the dust finally settled, or had they gambled too much on a second chance? No reality TV twist could answer that yet. If you thought the storm was over, think again. The true aftermath of this family feud is just beginning, and in Paris, temptations and tests wait in every direction. The story isn't finished, and neither is the fallout, not by a long shot. Paris looks different through the eyes of two people carrying so much baggage, emotional, financial, and the kind that no designer suitcase can hide. For a week, each sunrise is painted with relief. They stroll past cafes and up cobblestone streets, framing their shot for Instagram like everyone else. The Eiffel Tower gleams, pastries disappear, Julia laughs in a way fans haven't seen for years. On social media, everything is filtered and beautiful, the perfect honeymoon reboot. But under every picturesque selfie, there's a shadow that can't quite fade. Online, their escape becomes headline material. Suddenly their drama is the story every TLC fan page, gossip blog, and family therapist wannabe wants to analyze. Comments swing from heart emojis to "they'll never last," and armchair experts debate if Paris is healing their wounds or serving as a bandage too thin for the scars underneath. For every photo Julia posts from a new city view, there are 10 DMs asking, "Are you ever going home?" Others want to know if she was the villain all along, using Paris as a getaway car after causing chaos stateside. Brandon, quieter online, sticks to occasional shots of city lights, maybe a moody story with one line about finding peace. But his silence only fuels even more speculation. Fans question, is this happiness or is this running? With family intervention and reality TV gone, there's finally space to breathe, but the air in Paris comes with its own kind of pressure. Julia, freed from mother-in-law surveillance, starts trying on new versions of herself. She experiments with new looks, new business ideas, sometimes dropping subtle shade for those following along since day one. Brandon tags along for museum trips, but there's always a small gap between them, the kind not even a chaise by the Seine can fill. A luxury apartment doesn't erase old routines so easily. Night times are quieter now, no phone calls from Betty, no drama about chores left undone. But every unresolved argument lingers in the corners of their Paris flat. When Julia scrolls through old photos from the farm, she gets this mix of nostalgia and relief that surprises even her. Brandon, now miles from Virginia and the weight of his parents' expectations, still wakes up tense, half expecting confrontation at breakfast. Sometimes, freedom feels scary when you're not sure what to do with it. It's not long before new problems replace the old ones. As Julia puts more of her life online, monetizing her story with subscriptions and personal content, gossip fuel keeps the comment section boiling. Some say she's winning, cashing in on her past, and finally living as her own boss. Others accuse her of exploiting the drama for followers, cursing her for never being content or always chasing the next payday. Brandon watches it all happen in real time, uncomfortable but too worn out to object. Soon, friction grows around the choices they're making as a couple. Julia launches her OnlyFans, framing it as empowerment and a fresh start. But the critics pounce. Some see it as smart business, others claim it's disrespectful. Some even laugh that nothing ever changes, and old controversies only travel wherever Julia does. The DMs get ruthless. People compare Brandon's silence to spinelessness, claim the farm boy has lost his edge, and wonder if he'll ever feel comfortable in his wife's new spotlight. Trust starts showing cracks again. Julia confesses on camera, after moving to Paris, about kissing an ex years ago. Brandon is blindsided, mourning not just the confession, but the timing. Fans had always wondered about the strength of their relationship, but now the conversation shifts to whether it ever had a real chance away from the cameras and parental control. The fights aren't about chores or privacy anymore. Now it's about honesty, money, loyalty, and the pressure to survive as a brand instead of a couple. Did Paris fix anything, or did it just make everything quieter? Julia wonders aloud during an Instagram live stream. Some followers applaud her vulnerability. Others say it sounds like regret bubbling beneath the surface. A few even ask, would you go back now, knowing what you know? Each question is a small mirror, reflecting back the chaos of the past and the uncertainty of what counts as victory. There's a new kind of silence that comes with being so far from everyone who ever told you who to be. Brandon never says it openly, but he spends more time out, exploring the city solo, listening for an American accent in the crowd. Julia dives deeper into her new business life, not always mentioning Brandon's part in her posts. He notices, even if he doesn't say a word. Their unity, so hard-won at first, bends and twists under a different weight here, a freedom that sometimes feels like distance they don't know how to bridge. Meanwhile, fan pages light up with every scrap of news. Some recall the farm fights and brand Julia a survivor, a woman who never settled for less than independence. Others see selfishness behind each bold move or business decision. Then the focus turns to Brandon, with fans split. Was he too weak to stick up for what mattered, or quietly strong for leaving everything behind? Even now, the debate rages. Who's healing, who's hiding, who's growing, and who's simply running from consequence? The open questions from Virginia still echo here. Do parents ever let go for real? Does choosing each other mean permanently breaking ties with everyone else? Julia posts a story from a Paris rooftop, looking relieved yet a little haunted, and the comments section scrolls faster than her thumb can keep up. Brandon, never much for dramatic declarations, still checks his old family's Instagram from time to time, wondering if there's a way back or if this is the life he truly wanted. As the city lights fade into morning, nothing feels sure except the truth. The story isn't over, and reinvention comes with its own set of risks. Paris may be a stunning backdrop, but nobody gets to skip the work of repair, not for free, not even for $1.7 million. If you thought drama only happened under one roof in Virginia, you'd better pay attention. Real life rarely gives neat, happy endings, and for Brandon and Julia, every next chapter comes with a price. Even across an ocean, drama refuses to stay put where you left it. The moment Julia and Brandon surfaced online with their Paris update, the internet responded in the only way it knows how, with fire. Old fans and new lurkers flooded every post, dissecting photos, speculating about finances, wondering if Julia's latest business launch meant she was cashing in on the chaos or simply grabbing her own future by the collar. It didn't take long before the conversation turned from envy to attack. Some onlookers admired the hustle. Others doubled down, saying every breakup and makeup was now another money-making headline. Meanwhile, Julia's OnlyFans experiment fanned the flames. For weeks, her messages and comment sections were a battleground. Supporters cheered her hustle, critics called her every name in the book, and others zeroed in on Brandon's reactions. Would a guy raised on old-fashioned respect ever accept his wife's new digital income stream? It wasn't just about business. Suddenly their marriage was everyone's business. There were think pieces and Reddit threads, people running polls on whether Brandon and Julia would actually make it or if the next bombshell was only days away. Then came the cheating controversy that nobody saw coming, or maybe everyone did, but hoped would just play out quietly for once. Julia admitted on camera that she'd once kissed an ex. The moment traveled online at lightning speed. Overnight, fans went from debating family dynamics to rehashing what counts as cheating versus emotional history. For some people, it was the proof they needed to pin every problematic headline on Julia. Others saw her confession as another sign she never quite fit the script TLC handed her, messy, honest, and painfully human. Brandon, not naturally built for internet wars, waited it out. His posts dwindled. When he did appear, his usual open-faced optimism felt replaced by something closer to exhaustion. Fans speculated he was burned out by public scrutiny, or maybe just tired of defending a marriage everyone had already decided they could pick apart for sport. Every smile in a picture was debated. Was it relief, resignation, or the calm before the latest storm? Never count out a mother-in-law, especially one like Betty whose shadow lingers even from thousands of miles away. Betty's own social media activity spiked, sometimes defensive, sometimes cryptic, always magnetizing attention. She posted throwback photos and ambiguous captions, fueling rumors about reconciliation, hurt feelings, and lingering bitterness. It was clear she hadn't given up claiming her narrative. For those watching, this wasn't just about a marriage gone global. It was about old wounds finding new ways to reopen. Some speculated on forums whether a family intervention special could be around the corner, and if TLC would ever resist the urge to cash in on all the fresh drama that hadn't even finished cooling off. With every new twist, the audience found fresh ground for debate. Is Julia really redefining herself or simply burning bridges so she never has to look back? Is Brandon an underdog escaping manipulation or a loyal son losing his roots for nothing? Public opinion zigzagged more than ever. Every update, every announcement, every cryptic fan QA kept people glued for the next twist. Days when Julia talked about pregnancy struggles or missing home, the tone shifted from snarky roast to genuine empathy, fans flooding her inbox with mixed messages. The couple learned in real time that the internet delivers both comfort and cruelty. For every encouraging DM, there were 10 more waiting to pick at insecurities, criticize every move, and question every motive. The drama wasn't just digital. Brandon and Julia's move sparked gossip among friends from Virginia, too. Stories filtered back about the farm being quieter, neighbors guessing at the true fallout, distant relatives making awkward calls instead of weekend visits. Even with money in their pockets and freedom under their feet, some things stayed sticky: family, identity, and the feeling you left something unfinished back home. If there's any lesson to pull from their mess, it's that boundaries matter, but drawing them rarely comes without cost. Julia and Brandon learned that you can win your way out of one toxic cycle and start another one across the sea if you're not careful. Family loyalty isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about self-preservation. Fans watched two people try to save each other and themselves, fumbling and fighting and failing as often as they succeeded. Watching their marriage split online became less about who was right and more about how hard it is to heal when everyone is watching or waiting for you to fail. Public drama comes easy when you only see the highlights. Real pain is slower and rarely tidy. For every laugh at Brandon's expense or eye roll at Julia's business ventures, there's a private cost nobody calculated. Families that threaten to split down the middle usually leave everyone limping, no matter who walks away with more freedom or more followers. Wounds heal, but the scars show up in every next relationship, every risk taken, every trust rebuilt or discarded. Fans hoped Paris would fix everything or break them for good. What happened was neither. They're still two real people, carrying their baggage and each other's expectations into every new city, every business pitch, every family call that ends in cold silence instead of closure. So what's next? Rumors are swirling, insiders are hinting, and another TLC family seems ready to erupt into the kind of chaos only reality TV can deliver. If you think the Gibbs story was explosive, wait until you hear what's brewing with another couple on the network, a feud so tangled, producers might not need to script a single moment. Get ready, because messy isn't going out of style, and in this universe, there's always a new scandal one episode away.